everyone. This is the D.C. Office of the Tenant Advocates webinar series, OTA A to Z. I'm your host, Derek McGinty. Today, we're going to talk security deposits. Now, as most of you know, that's the money a tenant pays up front to provide landlords with just the thing the name implies, some security for their property. But that pile of cash can also amount to a huge barrier to you getting the home you want. However, there are rules and there is help. My guest today is going to talk about all of that. He is Stephen Dudek. He is Outreach and Education Coordinator for the OTA. He's been working there with more than 3 years, and he started off as just an attorney advisor, but now he's been moved up, Steve. It's always good to chat with you.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
All right. This is the most important part of this question, and that is, how much does a landlord have the right to charge for a security deposit?
A landlord can only charge up to 1 month's rent. Anything higher is illegal, but anything lower is permissible.
Okay, so when you say 1 month's rent, that's in addition to the first month's rent that you've got to pay.
Yes,
right?
yes. So the value of that first month's rent.
Right. And that is, as I said, to help provide security for the landlord, correct?
Yeah, the security deposit is usually the tenant's money, and so that's why you have a right to return. And the landlord holds it and places it in an interest-bearing account just in case if the tenant causes any physical damage to the landlord's property or monetary damage. So if you didn't pay any late fees or you missed your rent, they can use that and reimburse themselves for that harm the tenant caused them.
Who gets the interest on that account?
The tenant gets the interest on that account as long as they stay there for 12 months. So that's why it's placed in the interest-bearing account, and the landlord should be notifying the tenant that where the security deposit is placed, because it has to be placed here in DC, and they should be providing a 6-month notice of the interest that accrues on that account.
To your estimation, what percentage of tenants have no idea that they have all these rights regarding their security deposit?
Very few, and most landlords don't know that they have to post the 6-month interest rate. I want to say that none of the landlords do. I go around and talk about security deposits, and I always talk about that most tenants never receive this 6-month notice of the interest that accrues on their security deposit.
One thing most tenants do seem to know, though, right, is that they are supposed to get it back if they move out. They do know that much, right?
Exactly, yes. And what that process consists of is the landlord has 45 days to do one of two things: to fully return the security deposit back to the tenant, or to give a written letter saying, hey, we're fully or partially keeping your security deposit.
45 days.
Yeah. If they get that letter now, they have an additional 30 days to provide the tenant an itemization, a list of all the deductions from the security deposit.
Right. So what are some of the things that are allowed for a landlord to claim that he needs to keep some of your money, basically?
So I'm going to give you a very legal answer. Anything beyond reasonable wear and tear. Now, people say, what is reasonable tear? And so I use a rug. Say you live in a unit with a rug, and you live there for 6 years, and you walk across it. That's reasonable use. There's no stains, nothing on that. If the landlord wants to replace that, that shouldn't be deducted from your security deposit. Now, if you have a good time and you have wine stains over it, you have an animal in there, has damage due to the animal, that's damage that you caused, and the landlord should be able to deduct that from your security deposit.
So as you prepare to move out and you're pulling your act together, what are the things a tenant ought to do to be sure that the security deposit's getting back to them within that 45 days?
Documentation, documentation, documentation. We have technology at our hand, so use that cell phone. Walk through your unit, document every condition of the room, narrate it. If you don't have a cell phone, write it down, send it to the landlord. You can also request an inspection from the landlord and do a walkthrough together so you can identify all the issues. But the biggest thing is document. A lot of people, they give those keys and they forget to document the conditions of the unit. And they just have to use technology at your hands, use that video, take pictures of your unit.
You know, I hate to even acknowledge this, but every once in a while I'll see Judge Judy on TV, and she always goes to the pictures and says, what can you show me in terms of damage? And she also brings up natural wear and tear, which you said that does not count as something you can be reimbursed for.
Exactly, and that's what those pictures and videos will capture, because what happens if you want to contest a withholding of your security deposit, you'll most likely end up in small claims court, which is the equivalent of Judge Judy, but without the TV cameras.
So is there ever a time that a landlord gets to keep all of your money?
Yes, if you don't pay your rent, say for example you have 3 months left on your lease and you decide to vacate and not tell the landlord has every right to keep that rent. that security deposit to reimburse them for that rent. They still should send you a letter and saying that you owe them those additional 2 months' rent as well.
You mentioned the fact that most landlords don't even know exactly what the rules are. What's your sense of the most misunderstood concept around security deposits that ends up bringing landlords and tenants into conflict?
It's just knowing what the law states and the protections afforded to tenants in the law. The law has a lot of bark but no bite, and this is where landlords take advantage of the tenants.
What do you mean by that?
For example, if you're a tenant and you vacate and the landlord knows that you're going to move out of the area, the landlord may be accustomed to blur the lines and say, you know what, I'm going to deduct you for these costs because it's unlikely for you to give the expenses to come back and contest the withholding of the security deposit. In addition, tenants also have higher expectations. They think that the carpet should be replaced every so often, or the wall should be painted every so often. And there is no statutory requirement for the landlords to replace the carpet or paint the walls. Hopefully they do it after each tenant moves out, but there is no statutory means for the landlord to do it.
So let's say you move out, the landlord's playing around with your money, doesn't want to pay you. What can OTA do to help?
Call us if this happens. Call us if it's been 45 days if you haven't received any notification from the landlord. What we'll explain is the small claims process where we can assist you filing that complaint and give you tips on how to organize your complaint, organize your documents, because when you get in front of the judge, it can be nerve-wracking, but we can give you that assistance to say, this is what you should say, these are the documents you should present to the judge.
Now, should we note that this is a different court than landlord-tenant court, right?
Yes.
Why is there a different court than landlord-tenant court?
So small claims court deals with a jurisdiction focusing only on monetary issues. So they pass a law probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, which upped the amount in controversy. So it used to be $5,000, now it's $10,000, which is great. And as I mentioned, it's just like Judge Judy. You'll file a complaint and then you have initial hearing. At the initial hearing, you'll attend mandatory mediation. Always attend that for 2 reasons. The first reason is this is the last chance you have a say in the outcome, where you can negotiate a deal with the landlord. The second reason, if you don't have a deal with the landlord, it allows you to do your homework to understand the arguments the landlord may present in front of the judge. And if you can make your arguments knowing that information, I think you have a better shot of winning your case.
All right. Now, on the other side of this thing, at the beginning of a tenancy, security deposits can help or can keep lower income people from being able to even afford to rent. What can OTA do to help that?
So OTA does, on a limited basis, offer some security deposit assistance, but the main player is ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, where depending on your income, they can provide first month's rent and security deposit payment for a tenant. So I would definitely contact us and we can give you those 6 nonprofits that work with ERAP.
All right, so this is important because without that money, you wouldn't be able to move in, and you might think that there's no help out there, but actually there are some people who want
exactly.
to do
And the other thing is you can always negotiate with your landlord, see if you can have a lower security deposit. The only thing with that is if you cause harm to the property, you're going to bear that cost at the end of the tenancy.
Fair enough. Now we get to my favorite part where we get a chance to put you on the spot and ask some questions previously submitted by DC residents. Are you ready, Steve?
I am ready.
All right, here you go. Is a pet deposit considered a security deposit? And if so, is it subject to the same rules?
No, a pet deposit is completely different. A pet deposit is subject to your animal. So that can be non-refundable, and so that should be specified in your lease, and I would have that conversation with your landlord.
Wow.
Now, if the animal is a service animal or emotional distress animal, you want to make sure you notify the landlord because that pet deposit can be waived based on those situations.
Okay, important information there. Number 2, are landlords able to increase the security deposit amount when they increase your rent?
No. You only pay 1 fee for the security deposit, and it's the first time you move in. They can't increase the security deposit.
So they can't say, you owe me another $50 because the rent's gone up
Exactly.
$50.
You just stay, you only pay it once, and it stays at that amount.
All right, fair enough. Now, number 3 and the final question. I'm replacing a tenant on a lease for a unit that is already occupied with 3 people. The tenant moving out wants me to reimburse her for her portion of the security deposit. Should I reimburse her for her portion of the security deposit?
This is a situation that happens primarily amongst college students because they're always coming in, coming out. we would always recommend that the landlord reimburses the tenant with their security deposit, because what happens is if you go through this for a duration of 7 years, that last tenant that stays there may not receive the security deposit. And so that would be an issue in itself. So in that typical situation, when you move out, contact the landlord should give them their security deposit, and the new tenant should reimburse the landlord for their portion of the
Just
security
curious, D.C. is a huge college town. People may not realize how many universities there are here: Georgetown, American, George Washington, Howard. It goes on, Catholic. How many questions do you get regarding various states of living for college students?
A lot of questions, and actually my sister-in-law attended CUA, and she became a renter in the district, and I was sort of pulling my ear like, you need a college, you need to attend our Renters' Rights 101. I would say a high percentage of it, and the security deposits is probably one of the #1 issues that college students are facing.
Wow. Well, Steve Dudek, you are the man, sir. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And by the way, folks, if you've got any further questions, contact the OTA. The address is ota.dc.gov. Or you can go on the telephone, 202-719-6560, Monday through Friday, 8:45 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. Or if you've got some time, just stop in and pay us a visit at 2000 14th Street Northwest, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Well, as I mentioned, we've come to the end of our time today, so I'd like to thank our guest, Steve Dudek, for joining me on OTA from A to Z. We hope you will be around and check us out next time. This webinar and the others in the series will be available on the OTA website at ota.dc.gov. I'm Derek McGinty. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.